Empires are not built by armies alone. They are built by roads. And the greatest empires in history understood one simple truth: control the road, or become irrelevant. This is the story of the road that ruled kings. Wealth did not come from conquest. It came from movement. Silk from China, gold from Africa, spices from India. Whoever controlled their movement controlled history. The flow of goods was the flow of power, and this power was more absolute than any throne or any army. The coins, the seals, the contracts, these were the true instruments of empire. They represented a promise, a connection, a lifeline that stretched across deserts and mountains. To possess them was to hold the world in your hand, but to control the pathways they travel, that was to be a god among men. For thousands of years, civilizations rose and fell, not just on the battlefield, but on the balance sheets of trade. The real story of power isn't written in the blood of soldiers, but in the dust of the caravan trails. The Persians were the first to truly grasp this. They were not just conquerors, they were system builders. When Cyrus the Great and later Darius forged the Achaemenid Empire, they didn't just seize territory, they organized it. They built the Royal Road, a marvel of engineering stretching over 1,600 miles. But it wasn't just a road. It was a nervous system. Relay stations with fresh horses and riders were placed at regular intervals. A message could cross the empire in a week, a journey that would take a normal traveler 3 months. This wasn't just for military communication. It was for administration, for taxation, for trade. The Persians understood something no one else did yet. Empires collapse when trade stops. They created a unified currency, standardized weights and measures, and provided security for merchants. They didn't just rule land. They ruled the flow of everything: goods, information, and wealth. Their empire wasn't just a patch of color on a map. It was a living, breathing network. And the roads were its arteries. Rome is famous for its roads. All roads lead to Rome, they said, and they did. But this was also Rome's greatest weakness. The Romans were masters of engineering, building straight, paved roads that connected their legions and governors to the heart of the empire. But look at a map. Rome was on the western edge of the world's great economic engine. The true heart of global trade, the Silk Roads, lay far to the east, in Persia, in India, in China. Rome was a customer, a wealthy one, but a customer nonetheless. It craved the silks, spices, and exotic goods of the east, but it never controlled their source or their journey. Gold and silver flowed out of the empire in a torrent, heading east to pay for luxuries. In return, silk flowed in, and slowly, over centuries, Rome bled itself dry. Its military might was undeniable, but its economic position was fragile. It was a giant with a fatal dependency. Power without access is an illusion. Rome built the greatest road network in the West, but it never controlled the road that truly mattered. Then, everything changed. After the fall of Rome and the decline of Persia, a new power rose in the heart of the old world. When the Islamic world emerged, it did something unprecedented. It didn't just conquer lands. It united the entire network. For the first time, one civilization, one cultural and economic sphere, stretched from the Atlantic shores of Spain to the borders of Tang China. The Silk Roads, both on land and sea, were brought under a single, stable system. Trade became safer and more profitable than ever before. Knowledge became the new currency. Great cities like Baghdad, Damascus, and Cordoba became centers not just of commerce, but of learning. Scholars in the House of Wisdom translated the works of the Greeks, the Persians, the Indians. This wasn't an age of darkness. It was an age of connection. Doctors, scientists, astronomers, and mathematicians shared ideas across thousands of miles. The same economic system that moved spices and silk also moved algebra and medicine. The Islamic Golden Age was built on the secure and open flow of goods and ideas, proving that the ultimate power comes from fostering connection, not just from control. The struggle for these roads wasn't always fought with swords and shields. In fact, the most devastating wars were often silent. They were wars of economics. A new tariff could cripple a rival city. A blockade, whether by pirates or a state navy, could starve a kingdom without a single battle. Controlling a key mountain pass, a strategic port, or a desert oasis was like holding a knife to the throat of your enemy. Cut the road, and the empire starves. We see it time and again in history. A city flourishes for centuries, a vibrant hub of culture and wealth. Then, a rival power diverts the trade route. Perhaps a new sea lane is discovered, or a political alliance shifts. Suddenly, the caravans stop coming, the markets grow quiet, and within a few generations, the once great city is nothing more than ruins, sinking back into the sand. The ultimate weapon wasn't the catapult or the longbow. It was the power to close the road. Of course, controlling the world's most valuable real estate came at a price. Being the gatekeeper of global trade made empires fabulously rich. It also made them constant targets. Every rising power, every ambitious king, every nomadic chieftain, they all wanted the same thing: control of the road. And only one could have it. The immense wealth that flowed through these arteries funded not only grand palaces and libraries but also endless conflict. Rebellions sparked in provinces that felt exploited. Civil wars erupted between brothers vying for the throne that controlled the treasury. Assassinations were planned in the shadows to remove a leader who stood in the way of a commercial rival. The road was a source of life, but it was also a river of blood. The very thing that built these empires, the immense concentration of wealth and power, also planted the seeds of their own destruction. The fight for the road was a zero-sum game, and it was a game that never ever stopped. But the roads carried more than just silk and gold. They moved something far more powerful, something that could reshape civilizations from the inside out. They moved ideas, they moved beliefs, they moved gods. As merchants, missionaries, and pilgrims traveled these ancient paths, they brought their faiths with them. Buddhism traveled from India to China. Christianity spread into Persia and Central Asia. And later, Islam would ride these same routes across 3 continents. Once faith entered the road, the world would never be the same. The struggles for power would no longer be just about wealth, but about the human soul. Next time, on Hidden History, Gods on the Move, how religions traveled the Silk Roads. Thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe for our next journey into the past.